Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Taraham Bande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Paramanandamaravam Shri Chaitanya Ishvaram. So, this is spoken by Lord Shiva in glorification of the Supreme Lord. So sometimes persons say that Lord Shiva is the Supreme, but here we see that Lord Shiva is declaring that Lord Vishnu or Krishna is the Supreme. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Mayam tidam idam sarvam jagat avyakta murtina. I'm everywhere, and I'm all pervasive. So only the Supreme Lord can be all pervasive. The verses quoted from Brahma Samhita by Srila Prabhupada talks about the expansion of Paramatma, enter into each and every atom. First we have the first expansion of the Purusha avatars is Mahavishnu. And Mahavishnu, from the pores of his body comes the various universes, the Jagananda, they're like the shape of an egg, right? And they float on the causal ocean. And then Mahavishnu expands himself as Garbhodakashayi Vishnu and enters in each and every one of the universes. And then from the pores of his body comes so much water that fills up half the universe. Right? And he lies down on a bed of Anantasesh. And from his navel protrudes a lotus flower. And Lord Brahma is born on top of the lotus flower. So then Garbhodakashayi Vishnu expands as Kshirodakashayi Vishnu, which is referred to in this verse in Brahma Samhita, and he enters into each and every atom, right? Each and every atom. Just imagine, the Lord is there as Kshirodakashayi Vishnu, and he enters into the hearts of every living entity, right? So the Lord is there, he's all pervasive. Right? And when we see in the material world are a combination of two of the Lord's energies. One is the material energy, and one is the spiritual energy, or the living entities. Actually, Mahavishnu, he glances upon the material nature, and by that glance, he impregnates the material nature with the living entities, right? So the Lord, although he's present everywhere, and although the Lord, everything is ultimately resting in him, still at the same time, he remains aloof. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada is citing the other verse from Brahma Samhita, which talks about where the Lord resides. Goloka eva nifasati, that the Lord is residing in Goloka. And the verse also explains what he does there. People have some conception of God, but they really don't know what God does, right? Other than he supplies them the necessities of life, and therefore they pray to God, you know, our Father, give us our daily bread, right? So this is the general conception of God. And they know that God is not in this material world, he's up there, right? But here we have more detailed information about the Supreme Lord. Where exactly he lives, right? In Goloka. and what exactly he does. He's there with his Radharani, and Radharani has so many expansions. She's the Hlandini Shakti, his pleasure, expansion of himself, his pleasure potency. When the Lord wants to enjoy pleasure, he expands himself, his pleasure potency, so that he can enjoy the pleasure. Because the Lord is Anandamaya Brihasat, seeking pleasure. And as minute particles of the Supreme Lord, we also have that seeking pleasure. But because the living entity has become covered over with the false ego that he can enjoy separately from the Lord, therefore he's in this material world and has a material body. So this natural propensity, when it's expressed materially through a material body, it creates a lot of problems for the living entity. Lots of problems, right? Although the living entity is spiritual, Sat Chit Ananda, right? As a small particle of the Supreme Lord, he's also Sat Chit Ananda. But trying to express that desire to experience bliss through the material body or material nature, therefore the living entity has to experience birth, old age, disease, and death. The verse speaks about how the Lord is completely aware of all the activities of the living entities. Completely aware. Whether they're becoming more and more implicated in the material world, he's aware of that. Or by their endeavors, they're becoming free or liberated from the material conditions of life. The Lord is aware of that. But at the same time, we always have to keep in the mind that although he's present everywhere, he's aware of everything, at the same time, he's very much aloof. At the same time, he's very much involved with his loving devotees. In Goloka, the devotees there assist him in his pastimes of tending the cows and having various relationships, either with the gopis or his cowherd boyfriends, his mother and father, Yashoda, Nanda. So all the devotees there are involved in these pastimes with the Lord. He's busy with that. He's concerned with that. Right? So there's a certain amount of aloofness in relationship to this material world, which helps us to understand the philosophy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That yes, the Lord is simultaneously one with everything, Vasudeva Sarvamiti. Everything is Vasudeva, but at the same time, inconceivably he's different. Right? Simultaneously, inconceivably one and different. So this is the conclusion that we get from this particular verse, and Lord Shiva is explaining this to help us get a clearer idea of the Lord's position, right? The living entity is meant to understand the Lord and to revive his relationship with the Lord. And that's done by the process of bhakti yoga, and chiefly, especially in this age, by chanting of the Lord's holy name, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna. The holy name is non-different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and by chanting the holy name, the living entity can become purified, his consciousness can become purified, so that he can actually understand, as Lord Shiva understands in explaining about the position of the Lord. On our own, it's not possible to come to that clear understanding. One can speculate for many millions of births and not get a clear idea what is the position of the Lord. But if one becomes purified, if one becomes situated in one's relationship with the Lord, then the Lord, out of His mercy, out of His kindness, can reveal to the living entity about Himself. The Lord is not obliged to do anything, right? He acts according to His own desire. But the Lord becomes captivated by devotion to Him. We see in the example of the devotees in Braj, right? The Lord becomes attracted by their devotion. He becomes controlled by their devotion. Otherwise, who can control the Lord? Even Lord Shiva becomes bewildered. As we see later on in this chapter, he'll become bewildered by the form of the Lord as a woman, Mohini Murti. Right? So even Lord Shiva, so powerful, becomes bewildered by the energy and by the manifestations of the Lord. What to speak of ordinary living entities? But still, an ordinary living entity that has developed devotion for the Supreme Lord can captivate the Lord. The Lord becomes obliged to such devotees. There's always a competition between the Lord and the Lord's pure devotees. The Lord is trying to satisfy His pure devotees, and the pure devotees of the Lord, they don't have any other intention. They don't have any other desire but the desire to satisfy the Supreme Lord. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's described that when Krishna sees the beauty of the gopis, he becomes happy, right? And when the gopis see that Krishna becomes happy, they become more beautiful, right? And then Krishna again becomes more attracted by their beauty, right? So there's this continuous, and therefore devotional service, our love of Godhead, is known as Anandam. Anandam Buddhivardhanam. It's an ocean, right? It's ever increasing. Now, in the conditioned state, it's difficult for us to understand that, because our experience is that something's always diminishing in the material world. Diminishing, right? A boy and girl come together and they're very much attracted by one another, right? They fall in love, right? Fine. But we see that attraction always doesn't last, right? Every day we see how the divorce rate is increasing more and more. Either he cheated on her or she cheated on him, right? And so that initial attraction, it became diminished. Because it wasn't on the spiritual platform, that attraction was on the bodily platform. Right? And everything in the material world is working like that. It's diminishing. Just look around and see how the material world is working. I was just recently in Delhi, and the quality of air in Delhi is so bad. It's like one of the worst places on earth that you could possibly live. It's like smoking 2 packs of cigarettes every day. And in India, there's only 10 cigarettes in a pack, but in America, there's 20 cigarettes in a pack. So I think they were talking about American packs of cigarettes. The quality of air is diminishing. If you go to the Jamuna in Vrindavan, it's not the Jamuna. I mean, I'm sorry to say. But it's sewage, and factories off-flow, and cities off-flow. Jamuna doesn't come there. She's diverted into Haryana for growing rice. Right? But I can remember a time when I first went to Vrindavan, it was the Jamuna, and very clear water. You could even take bath there, but not today. Right? So there was some agitation that the government should allow the Jamuna, instead of diverting the water to Haryana, it should come to Vrindavan. Like that. And there was one saintly person from Vrindavan who was organizing the agitation to let the Jamuna come. Right? So they had a function here. And different devotees were speaking different things. But it came to my mind that the Jamuna, she's completely independent. Nobody can stop the Jamuna if she doesn't want to be stopped. Right? The Lord is controlling everything. Not a blade of grass moves without His sanction. So why the Lord doesn't want, or why the Jamuna doesn't want to come to Vrindavan, that we should try to understand. Right? There's so many sinful activities, so many non-Vaishnava activities going on right at the front of Chatikar Road, right? There's this 40-foot statue of Durga, right? So people are, instead of coming to Vrindavan to think about Krishna, to worship Krishna, they're seeing the statue of Durga. What a foolishness, right? You can go anywhere in the material world and you'll find Durga. You'll find the material energy working, right? And you want to go to Vrindavan to think of Krishna. But right there is Durga. Big statue. So everything, the understanding, the clarity, the elements, everything is diminishing in the material world. But that's not the situation in the spiritual world. In the spiritual world, things are ever increasing. Right? The beauty of Krishna is ever increasing. The devotion of the devotees for Krishna is ever increasing. And Krishna's attachment to the devotees is ever increasing. So obtaining that spiritual world, obtaining that position of developing attachment for the Supreme Lord, attachment to His holy name, attachment to His pastimes, attachment to His devotees, attachment to His understanding Him, how He works, how this material world everything is resting in Him. The example given in the verse is the air. Right? The air is in the sky. The wind is blowing everywhere. But at the same time, it's different. Right? You have a space, and in the space may be oxygen or air, right? But that air is separate from the space, although the air is resting within that space. In the same way, the Lord, by His energy, is everywhere, right? But at the same time, He's aloof from that. So understanding that, in order to come to the platform of understanding the Lord and how He works and what's the relationship between Him and all His various energies, even in the spiritual world, the devotees, like Radharani and the gopis, those are Krishna's energies, some of His energy. So in the same way, to understand that, one has to become purified. One has to become qualified to understand it. The ultimate understanding is by the mercy of Krishna. Not by your effort can you understand it. Not by your own endeavors, although certainly we have to endeavor. We have to try to understand. Srila Prabhupada has given us these books so that we can understand. Right? I remember Srila Prabhupada, when he was giving a lecture in Mayapur, one of the first lectures I heard in Sridhar Mayapur during the festival, the first international Gaur Purnima festival in 1974, Srila Prabhupada explained that, you know, these books, they're not just for selling, they're also for reading. Otherwise, why am I taking so much trouble, he said. And certainly, Srila Prabhupada was managing the worldwide movement, so many devotees, that he was guiding, so much managerial decisions he was taking, and seeing that everything goes on nicely. But at the same time, he was rising in the middle of the night, getting up in the middle of the night and translating Srimad Bhagavatam for our benefit. So Srila Prabhupada encouraged the devotees to read his books. But ultimately, to understand the books, we need the mercy. We need to attract the mercy of Srila Prabhupada in Krishna. So, one of the ways that we can attract the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and attract the mercy of Krishna is to distribute this knowledge that he's given to others. Right? By distributing this knowledge, by trying to understand the knowledge and distributing it to others, we can attract the mercy of Krishna so that we can actually understand the knowledge. We'll get realizations. There's Gyan and there's Vigyan. We'll get Vigyan, a practical understanding of knowledge that's there in these books. And that's the Vedic system. The Vedic system is to assist the spiritual master in the performance of yajna. In the Gurukuls, in the olden days, brahmacharis would go to the house of the spiritual master, right? The ladies didn't go. I don't think it was male chauvinism, it's just the way things work. But so they would go out, they would do menial service for the spiritual master. They would either beg door to door or go to the forest and collect wood for the sacrifice, for the yajna, right? And even Krishna, this is such an important thing that even Krishna went to the house of the spiritual master. And Krishna, by performing menial service, he wasn't going to gain any knowledge because he already had the knowledge. He was the source of all knowledge. But just to show the proper example he also went to the house, the ashram of Sandipani Muni, and performed menial service. There's a story you can read in the Krishna book how he went with his friend Sudama to the forest, and there was a storm, and all night they were caught in the cold and freezing rain. And the next morning, Sandipani Muni, along with the other devotees in the ashram, went to look for them. And he was so pleased that he had performed this austerities on his behalf. So this is the system. Carrying wood for the sacrifice. So one interesting point that Vaisheshika Prabhu makes in his Our Family Business, very interesting. I said, even in the Upanishads, it says that to understand this, you must carry wood. Right? Carry the wood for the sacrifice. Right? So how does that translate? And what Srila Prabhupada has emphasized as a service for all of us to do. Right? Well, he's encouraged us to distribute the books. Distribute books. Distribute books, distribute books. But what are books made out of? Paper. And what is paper made out of? Wood. So it's carrying the wood for the sacrifice, the Sankirtan Yajna, the same process, the same prescription of menial service to the spiritual master, assisting him in the Vedic sacrifice. Right? In the Vedic sacrifice, we hear the chanting of mantras. Om Shanti Om. Right? And these chanting of mantras, it pleases the Lord. He becomes pleased. But that same pleasure that the Lord receives by chanting the Vedic mantras, when a devotee goes out and tries to convince a conditioned soul to take one of Srila Prabhupada's books, those words, those explanations are as pleasing to the Lord as the chanting of Vedic hymns. So this activity of distributing Srila Prabhupada's books, it is completely authorized, it's completely in line with the Vedic prescription, and it also is helping so many persons come in contact with Krishna, because otherwise they won't have an opportunity to understand things as they are. There's so many confusing things in this, especially in India, about what the ultimate goal is. Right? Some people are saying that even Krishna didn't speak the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Shiva spoke the Bhagavad Gita. Now how confused can you get? Pretty confusing, right? There's a lot of things out there. So when you read Srila Prabhupada's books, they're so concise, they're so clear, they're so open to everyone to understand things properly. So this is a good opportunity for us to help other people and make a lot of advancement in Krishna consciousness by distributing Srila Prabhupada's books, so that we can attract the mercy of Krishna and clearly understand the explanations of Srila Prabhupada in his books. Hare Krishna. Are there any comments or questions or reflections or realizations that you want to share? Now we can open it up.